Okay, so we're looking at our second topic for the week, and we're now in chapter 4, designing significant learning experiences. So, in the initial phase here, the remaining efforts are important. They shape the nature and quality of the student's learning experience. So, it's necessary to give them the attention that they deserve as the prior components of this class. So, we're looking at now step 4, selective select effective teaching and learning activities. This fourth step is crucial and challenging. If the preceding steps are done well, you'll be in a good position to respond to this challenge. After carefully analyzing the teaching and learning situation, identifying the learning goals, and formulating feedback and assessment procedures, you face two questions. What will the students actually do? That is, the learning activities. And what will you do? Those being the teaching activities to make significant kinds of learning happen. For many decades or even centuries, teachers have followed a tradition in which their teaching activity consists primarily of presenting an organized summary of their understanding of the subject via lecturing and leading occasional whole class discussions of the subject, using questions intended to both intrigue the students and reveal new aspects of the subject. This tradition creates the kind of learning experience for students that primarily consists of listening to and taking notes on lectures and participating in class discussions with one's own thoughts and very occasionally with an original question. So, I taught a class today on cervical and thoracic therapeutic exercise for orthopedically injured patients. And that's kind of an approach I use. I tried to use an evidence-based approach, highlighting literature, also illustrating clinical experience as a practitioner for 25 plus years. And I also had cases for the students to work on. And so I basically used that approach. That worked good in that context. There was also, though, within that class, active learning. So I had lab components where students worked on the skills necessary to enhance their ability to prescribe therapeutic exercise, to assess people, and to prescribe therapeutic exercise for people with cervical and thoracic spine pathology. So this chapter starts off by looking at, okay, the lecture discussion tradition is out there, but will students learn more if they do more active methods? And this has been referred to as active learning. Active learning is anything that involves students in doing things and thinking about the things that they are doing. Here is an expansion of that from the textbook author to include analyzing what is valuable in both traditional and contemporary ideas about teaching, identify the key activities that allow effective teachers to be effective, generate appropriate teaching and learning activities for a given subject that are consistent with the principles of active learning, and reveal the synergistic interdependence among the three components of active learning. As teachers search for ways of moving beyond the lecture discussion tradition, what ideas are available to guide this effort? So figure 4.1 shows a basic model of passive and active learning. This diagram is based somewhat on the definition of active learning by Bonwell and Eisen, and somewhat expanded. What they call doing things is referred to here as experiences, and I think simply note the importance of recognizing two basic kinds of experience, doing experience and observing experience. What they describe as having students thinking about the things that they are doing is termed reflection. So, what are the doing experiences? Doing refers to any learning activity in which the learners actually do that which what we want them to learn how to do. Design a dam, for example, or conduct a high school band, or design and conduct an experiment, or critique an argument. When you think about the goals for a course, think about what it is you want students to do with this subject after the course is over. Design something, read articles critically, write an essay. Whatever it is you want the students to learn to do, that is what they need to be doing in the course. Next up here, let's talk about observing. Observing occurs whenever a learner watches or listens to someone else doing something related to what they are learning. This might be observing a teacher demonstrate something, listening to other professionals perform, or observing the phenomena being studied. Observing gives learners a chance to experience the reality of phenomena they are studying. Providing this opportunity can sometimes be challenging for a teacher, but creative teachers are always searching for effective ways to do this. Reflection, the second major component of active learning. This is when the act of reflection is linked to the human need to make meaning. The enormous significance of activity becomes then clear. People are meaning-making beings. We make meaning based on our experiences and on the information and ideas we encounter. However, this is where a potential problem crops up. Whenever someone has a new experience or encounters a new idea, those events automatically have an initial meaning to them. But this initial meaning may remain buried at the unconscious or subconscious level. When this happens, the meaning may be limited, distorted, or even destructive. As humans, we have the capacity to change the meaning of our ideas and experiences, but only when we pull our original meanings up to the conscious level and reflect on what new meaning we want these ideas and experiences to have. When we engage in such reflection on the meaning of our learning experiences, there are certain questions that can guide reflection. What have I learned? How did I learn that? What helped me learn? What didn't help me learn? What does that tell me about the nature of learning? About myself as a learner? How do these new experiences relate to my prior beliefs about reality and my values? Do they challenge me to revise any of my beliefs and values? Do these new experiences contain any implications for my future life as a professional, as an individual, as a member of various social groups, or as a member of different political communities? Does this recent learning create a need or desire for additional learning? If so, how would I learn that? Read a book, talk to someone, do an experiment, take a course, attend a conference, or something else. Some portion of the meaning-making process will always need to be done by individuals who spend time reflecting alone. But most people find that making meaning entirely by themselves is not the most effective way of accomplishing a task. When we engage in dialogue with others, the possibility of finding new and richer meanings increases dramatically. In addition, when people collaborate, or they collaboratively search for the meaning of experiences, information, ideas, they also create the foundation for community. Creating a sense of community is a concept that can greatly enhance the quality of learning experience at the level of an individual course and at the level of the whole college experience. Now, looking at a holistic view of active learning, these three components of active learning combine to form an enlarged and more holistic view of the topic, one that includes getting information and ideas as well as experiences and reflection. We need a more holistic view to create the kinds of learning activities capable of achieving significant learning. This figure illustrates the new conceptualization of active learning, one that makes all three modes of learning an integral part of a more complete set of learning activities. This view of active learning suggests that two principles should guide the choice of learning activities. First, an effective set of learning activities is one that includes activities from each of the three components of active learning: information and ideas, experiences, and reflection. Second, direct ways of providing these three forms of learning are preferable whenever possible. Indirect or vicarious forms may be necessary at times, but teachers who can find direct ways of providing active learning enhance the quality of student learning. So this exhibit here, Exhibit 4.1, identifies a number of specific learning activities categorized in terms of which component of active learning they support. There are some activities which students are engaged directly in a particular aspect of learning and others indirectly. So take a moment, review through this, see if any of them are things that would make sense within your OTD program. I'm going to give a few seconds of dead air. This is your chance to pause the recording and then pick things back up again just shortly thereafter. Okay, so we talked about doing experiences before. There are doing experiences and observing experiences, both of which are valuable. A direct doing experience consists of students engaging in a real action in an authentic setting. For example, teacher wants to prepare music students to be public school band teachers, then providing them with an opportunity to go into a real school setting and lead the band students there, even if for a short period of time, would be giving them a direct doing experience. Our PT and OT students going out to clinicals are direct doing experiences. Sometimes indirect or vicarious doing experiences are valuable. Case studies, simulations, role-playing, these are all forms of learning that provide students with that vicarious form of doing. Very important. Observing experiences, students can directly observe relevant phenomena in some cases, but in other cases they need to seek indirect observations. Some familiar examples of direct observation might include students in an art class going to a painter's studio and observe how a professional painter goes about the task of creating a picture. Observing experiences would be PTs and OTs going into an ICU and seeing how clinicians work with patients in that environment. There are some additional observing experiences listed on this slide. Now, reflection after students have encountered new information and ideas and had new doing and observing experiences, they need time to reflect in order to decide what meaning to give other learning activities. Without this reflection, they have learned something, but they have not made that learning fully meaningful. Two activities that encourage students to reflect on the subject of the course are participating in classroom discussions and writing term papers. Writing term papers may be challenging in an entry-level clinical program like a DPT or OTD. They take time, and we've got students doing a lot of work. Classroom discussions are very important and very valuable. Getting people to do small group work, answering questions, engaging with the material, and then participating in large group discussions can be very meaningful. 3 strategies for implementing powerful forms of active learning. To incorporate active learning into your course in an effective way, you need to build learning activities that include these 3 components. Step 1, create rich learning experiences. So exhibit 4.2 illustrates some rich learning experiences. I think the role-playing and simulations are some of the best examples that you can do in the class for PT and OT programs. Outside of the class, service learning are great ways of doing things. For example, I used to take students out to the vineyards during the summer. We partnered with the the public health nurses who had a program in place where they would go provide services to the migrant farm workers. This service learning gave chance for students to practice what they had learned in orthopedics class and to provide then service to an underserved population. Your textbook talks about some different strategies. I liked discussing my strategy there a little bit better. If you're curious about some undergrad strategies, you can go to the textbook and review through those. Strategy number 2, find new ways to introduce students, information, and ideas. Kind of a classic way is using lectures and textbooks. And this is really kind of an interesting thing. Something that we're recognizing is we need to do a better job of using textbooks or having students buy textbooks. Why? Because textbooks, at least for physical therapy, provide the foundation for material that's potentially going to be on their national exam test. You can teach, leading cutting edge stuff in your class, but if there isn't that foundational information that's kind of that classically accepted that's in a nationally recognized textbook, you may be putting the students at a little bit of a disadvantage. And there's all different types of ways that you can use the computer and the internet to find ways to introduce information. And I think for our students, a big way with the computer is accessing the literature to be able to find things that are current or contemporary. Number 3, promoting in-depth reflective writing on the learning process. That's strategy number 3 here. And this strategy is the third strategy for making teaching more powerful is related to the third component of active learning, reflection, and is focused on the special value of writing about the learning process itself. This recommendation is based on 2 beliefs. The first is that writing, when viewed as a process and when done properly, has a unique ability to develop the interior life of the writer. The second belief is that the act of focusing students' attention on the learning process will make them more aware of themselves as learners and will thereby begin the process of developing their ability to create meaning in their lives. So table 4.3, or excuse me, exhibit 4.3 here gives some tips, some basic ideas on reflective writing. Please feel free to pause the recording and check that out. There are a few different ways to do reflective writing: 1-minute papers, regular journal writing, and learning portfolios. 1-minute papers, this is basically take out a piece of paper, in response to a question, write down as much as you can in 1 minute. So at the end of an individual class session or during the last class of a weekly sequence, teacher asks students to take out the piece of paper, write a short answer to a question. The question can vary, but it's often something like, what's the muddiest point of today's lecture? In your own words, how would you describe your relationship between topics X and Y? What's an important question that remains unanswered to you? So that's an example of a quick, down and dirty reflective writing assignment. Journaling, another way to have people kind of keep track of their thoughts. It's a more extended form of writing. Students keep a running commentary during the whole course. Usually the teacher collects these periodically and reads them, makes comments and returns them. Sounds like a lot of work to me. If I've got 50 some students, I don't have time for that. This kind of writing prompts students to reflect on the meaning of their learning experience. The main difference between this and the 1-minute papers is that a course-long journal writing allows students more opportunity to connect and build on their interpretation of the learning experience. And then there's learning portfolios. So creating a learning portfolio is a natural extension of reflective writing. And in the learning portfolio here, we see this interrelationship among learning goals, teaching and learning activities, and feedback and assessment. Central idea of learning portfolios is for students to reflect on a selected learning experience, which may be a single course, all the courses in their major, or their whole college experience. Then at the end of the course, Students put together a document that describes and illustrates the meaning of the whole learning experience. Generally, the portfolio consists of two parts: a narrative statement and an appendix with various kinds of material that illustrate and support the comments in the narrative. Ways to use the learning portfolio: as a well-written statement about one's ability to communicate, and as an appendix of communication samples. So, what's an example of effective use of portfolios at the college level? Alverno College in Wisconsin has students work on a learning portfolio throughout their entire time. As undergraduate, students collect information about their own learning in reference to the 8 central abilities that guide the curriculum, those being communication, analysis, problem solving, valuing and decision making, social interaction, global perspective, effective citizenship, and aesthetic response. To graduate, students must, among other requirements, be able to document a certain level of proficiency in all 8 abilities. Teachers, administrators, and assessors at the college feel that the process of creating portfolios is very important in their effort to create an ability-based learning experience for students and a central part of the institution's effort to monitor how well the educational program is succeeding. Final kind of topic or suggestion here: online and distance learning, are they as good as a live classroom? And I think the research generally suggests yes, and it all depends upon how well of a job the instructor designs the course as well as the interaction with the students. And that's the important aspect side of things. We're even seeing now people using online components in addition to the live classroom stuff that they do. So technology is allowing us different ways to deliver material. So for example, you're listening to this, you're doing this completely online. That is one way. There are then flipped classroom examples where you might have somebody listen to a lecture prior to coming to class and then coming to class and doing all active learning. There might be short little mini lectures, 10, 20 minutes, then coming to class and participating in cases. So having a little bit of background information. So online and distance learning is here. It's going to continue to stay here. If you are teaching any online or distance courses, utilizing the same principles that have been talked about in this text already. What do you want the students to learn? What does that look like? How do you assess that? Also, how do you engage the students and create community? Some classes are a little bit easier than others to facilitate that. All right, let's end the lecture here.